So good morning, everyone. So once again, this is an audio test. I noticed some of you just joined a bit recently. If you can hear me, can you please reply or acknowledge in the chat window? Hey Nitin, hey Rukshar Ahmad, how are you? Srirang, loud and clear, thank you. Great. Um, I'm assuming others can hear me. Yes, good to go. Fantastic. Um, just before we continue, just a disclaimer kind of a thing, because we are taking this as a webinar, there are chances that there might be some latency problems, basically some lag or things like that. Means my audio and the video that you see on the screen may not sync up. In case if you have difficulties for that, drop us a message or probably try to disconnect and reconnect to the session and let us know. So yes, let's get started. Already time is up. So I hope you can see my screen and you can see the presentation in the presentation view. So that's the title and that's the topic for today. So my name is Hardik Mistry and I'm based out of India itself. And I understand most of you are also based out of India. So I'm based out of a city called Vadodara that's in Gujarat. And yes, I'm a Gujarati, you know, and I'm doing this webinar from home. So, I apologize in advance for any background effects that you may get because of Ganesh celebration or something else, so just bear with me, so enjoy, right? So let's start our journey and I'll give you a walkthrough about what DevOps is and like why you should consider it and how you can take advantage for the same. So moving on, that's me, Hardik Mistry. I just started a company called Appmatic. As you can see, you can read about myself. Like I can obviously write code, makes sense. I can speak at meetups, so yeah, that makes sense as well. I engineer products, so my main focus area is product engineering. I'm a precision driver, so commonly it's like a precision driver is somebody like imagine you're watching a South Indian movie or some Hollywood movie or let's say any movie where you see some high-speed chase of a car or something like that. So I'm legally licensed to do that and trained to do those stunts, but it's advisable not to do it on public roads or public properties, right? So if you are interested, you can go to a racetrack or something and enjoy yourself. If you want to know more about me, you can look up about.me/Hardik Mistry. That will give you a page with a beautiful version of my face holding a mic, and probably you'll like it and you can read something about myself. And then, yes, I am a Microsoft MVP since January 2018. I have strong skills for Xamarin, Microsoft Azure, and DevOps. Of course, there are other technologies and areas which I know and which I work with, but those are not my, the strongest point. You can also look up my GitHub profile on github.com/mystery Hardik. And what you see in the title at the header kind of a thing, like @mystery Hardik05, that's my Twitter handle. So if you folks are using Twitter, go ahead and follow me or go ahead and ask me questions. So that brings us to the next slide. So before we start off, sometimes it happens that some of you will be more than interested to ask questions regarding the topic that we are talking about or things like that. So this time we have taken a different approach. What we actually want you to do is like, if you have questions while we are talking, while the webinar is going on, we want you to ask questions to me, and also along with me, you need to do @dear_Azure_net. That's the official Twitter handle for Dear Azure, who are organizers of this webinar. Of course, you must be aware of that. And also you need to use hashtag Dear Azure and hashtag Azure DevOps. We'll talk in a while why that hashtag Azure DevOps. But so if you can notice on the screen, that's a sample tweet where you can ask your question. It may be anything, but I'll be answering those questions once we are done with the webinar. That is after 10:30, and I'll make sure that I answer all of your questions with relevant information before end of the day. Okay, so I hope it's clear. Don't post your questions in the chat window. Post your questions directly on our Twitter handles, respectively, so that we can keep a track of your questions as well as we can answer those questions as soon as possible. Okay, so moving on to the actual thing. So yes, let's kind of understand what DevOps can be or what you have been understanding about DevOps. And this is something which you folks have actually seen somewhere, or this is something what you see on some of the job portals and things like that. So is it a job? No, it's not a job. Is it a product? So there are teams or there are people I come across during my day-to-day work where they claim that, okay, we are doing some automation, we have some tools in place, we are using a million tools and our team is more than happy. But in reality, even that is not DevOps. So there are companies or individuals who assume that just because I'm doing automation or something, as you might have heard about it, CI/CD, you must be like, okay, I'm doing DevOps, so I'm the champion. But that's kind of just 10% of the actual DevOps story. So, and that's the purpose of this 1 hour talk that we'll be having. It's more of an informal talk. It's kind of a discussion that we'll be having, but in the format of a webinar. So as I said, like ask your questions on Twitter, okay? So moving on. So in reality, DevOps is, as you can read for yourself, it's a union of people, process, and products, which enable us to deliver effectively to our end users. And that was the statement given out by Donovan Brown. He's the group program manager for DevOps at Microsoft. He works for Microsoft, and naturally, as you might have already understood, the slide is also from Microsoft. So moving on, why is DevOps important? So naturally, your friend or your colleague or your competitor is already doing it. You want to increase velocity as in terms of not just the speed of your delivery of your product, but at the same time, how quickly and how efficiently you deliver your product to your end users or to your customers. You want to obviously reduce the downtime. You want to have minimum problems, or you want to handle bugs way before your product is launched into production. So all of you can imagine a state or situation, and you must have faced a problem at least once in your life where you deliver a product to your customer, and then that customer came back to you with the feedback, or let's say complaint or a bug, that hey, this button is not working, or that particular feature is not working as expected, and so on. And generally, as developers, because I'm assuming most of you are engineers by profession, or profession in the sense like you are basically people who write code. And even if you're a manager, I assume that you must have done some level of programming in your career. So having said that, you must have come across a scenario or a situation which we call as works on my PC. So works on my PC scenario is when somebody walks to you and complains you that this piece of code is not working, you commonly complain that, hey, it was working on my laptop yesterday, and I have no idea why is it not working on your laptop. Maybe you should format your laptop, maybe you should reinstall Visual Studio or some tool. So basically you will basically not accept or absorb the fact that something may not work on a different environment. And we all have come across this kind of challenges from the early days of our career. So as you can imagine, last 2 points basically talk about that. So you want to reduce the downtime. So any kind of human problems or technical problems or even non-technical problems. So that's why DevOps can be more important for you. So we'll be talking about a story like how Microsoft does DevOps. Of course, we are not talking everything because of the time that we have on hand, but we'll walk through some scenarios and how to overcome those scenarios. So moving on to the next slide, you can notice this is the traditional way of function for probably all companies and organizations. So you are, let's say, the developer yourself, and then you have some another team or some another unit in your company who are the IT guys or operation guys. So as you can see in the diagram, like the dev sent out a package to the operation guy, and the operation guy is now planting the bomb. So the bomb has exploded. The explosion is mainly because you may not have clarified that you need access to this SQL instance, or you may not have clarified you need access to this particular read-write permission on a particular folder on that Windows server or that Ubuntu environment or whatever you are running on. So in short, there is a lot of confusion between both of those teams. Rarely there is a good synchronization. Rarely there is good exchange of information. So more or less, it's more about participation, which probably most of us don't want to do because you will have to take up more responsibility. But tell you what, if you do not take responsibility, even using a tool will not really help you, because then again, it's your responsibility to fill up some information in the tool, which we'll be doing right now in a moment. So unless until you participate, unless until you as a developer, as well as an operation guy, unless you participate together, nothing can really help you to derive better value. So this is how it looks like. If you may kind of understand the picture in front of you, obviously there is an elephant, you must be laughing at it maybe. A beautiful picture, by the way. And there are some folks, you may notice that these people are kind of blindfolded. They are not obviously allowed to see what they are actually experiencing, but then they are actually experiencing something. So one of them, if you may notice on the left of the picture, is trying to touch the teeth of the elephant, and he says, oh, this is DevOps. Then another guy is climbing the ladder and trying to feel or experience the elephant's ear, and he has his own thoughts of, oh, this is DevOps. Then there's another guy who says, hey, touching a tail of an elephant is, oh, this is DevOps. And then riding the elephant itself is DevOps. So there are different people with different perception. Everybody has their own thoughts around it. Depending upon the job role, the same applies to you as well. You might be just a junior engineer. You might be a manager. You might be something at your organization. Now, depending upon your profile and your work culture, you might be doing, let's say, only 5% of what maybe all of you should do together. So in reality, everybody actually carries a different perception about different things. So moving on, this gives you a bit clarification. If you may keep an eye on the text which comes on the same slide. So DevOps is development and operations collaboration. So yes, we all should participate together. If that's not what is possible for your company, to be very honest, that will be more than difficult for you to adopt even in next 100 years. Unless until everybody comes together and participates, none of the tools are going to give you the true benefit. DevOps is treating your infrastructure as code. So yes, there are developers who may not understand permissions or user access, or who may not understand how to install a particular piece of software and things like that. I mean, it's not that you are not skilled, but there are chances that you may not know how to spin up a new environment instance for Windows Server 2012 R2 with Active Directory installed in it and configured with your existing Active Directory of your organization. Whatever you heard right now was kind of jet airways for you, like everything was, oh my God, he said something, God knows what. But yes, in reality, because you don't do it on your daily life, in your daily life, chances are that you don't really have that emphasis. Mainly you are focused on that particular job role. So if your job role is to write code, you're more than interested to open Visual Studio, edit the code, or do some changes, or implement a new feature or some method or something, do a check-in, check-out, or commit and push, and that's all for you. That's your life. So you may not really look at infrastructure at all, and that's where the problem comes in. I noticed somebody's trying to say something. Sai Kiran, can you please ask those questions in Twitter? So just to help you guys, you can ask the questions in Twitter. I will not be answering questions in the chat window. I'll be taking questions after the session just because of the limited time that we have. So please do not mind. Just hang on. And by the way, just to quickly answer your thoughts, Sai Kiran, if you just bear with me during the presentation, you'll get an understanding that what's the difference, okay? So yes, continuing to our presentation. So DevOps is using automation. So yes, automation is one of the part of your journey to achieve true DevOps. DevOps is feature switches. So you can actually enable feature gates wherein you launch only, let's say, 2 features in your website. And then when you see that your audience or your customers are liking it, you can introduce new features and so on. DevOps is small deployments. So for example, you must be already doing something like where you are having an iteration or a sprint, depending upon what kind of terms you use in your company. So for some of you, the iteration or the sprint may be limited to, let's say, just one sprint is, let's say, 1 week. For some of you, one sprint might be 2 weeks. For some of you, one sprint might be 3 weeks. But lesser the number of days, the better or more efficient your team is. So the general practice is like you may not want to go beyond one sprint equals to 1 week or one iteration equals to 1 week. So you essentially want to release or update your product or your website or mobile app, whatever you're building basically, at least or minimum once a week. That's what the ideal strategy should be. If you're not doing that, then consider doing it as soon as possible. And then you should have some effective way to manage your work. Currently, the traditional way of managing work is sending too many emails to your team members, having that stand-up meeting every day in the morning where everybody is bored, which probably all of you will be attending tomorrow morning because tomorrow is Monday. And as you can imagine, it generally does not lead to productivity because sometimes you're not heard at all. Heard in the sense like your manager or your team lead or somebody who is actually standing there in front of you and asking you questions that who is doing what and where are we and what are we facing challenges with and so on. You do a kind of a Q&A situation, but then you're not able to measure your productivity. You're not able to measure or track who is doing what and things like that. So it basically converts into a lot of confusion. It converts into a lot of chaos. And as a team, your productivity is affected. So yes, there should be some tool or some way to effectively track your work. So Kanban is one of those ways you can do it. So as per our talk so far, it's basically a 3-stage conversation. Number one, everybody should participate, including the infrastructure people, including folks who manage your servers or your environment, basically. Even if they are managing Azure or even if they are managing anything else, AWS or Google or whatever your company is working with, those people as well as you as developers should collaborate together. That's step one, and that should be the important thing to focus on. Then also you need to emphasize on a particular process. All of your team members should follow a particular policy, should follow a particular way of work. And then at the end of the day, you should use tools and products or services which allows you to achieve all these benefits. So as you can see, this diagram basically helps you understand like what you do and what you do not do. So for example, if you may see for yourself, like, so here, let me try to zoom in. So if you may notice in my zoomed in screen, so outperforming teams, like those who are doing great, they are 54% more likely to collaborate. This is kind of a sentence, but split across different words. So they're 54% more likely to collaborate extensively, means they talk to each other, they help each other, and so on with their counterparts. So they consider themselves as a team and not just as an individual. I have come across teams in my career where I saw folks who don't participate very effectively. They, for some reason, they try to hide as if they have some trade secret or something. They don't share some vital information with me, for example, which leads me into a confusion state or in a blind spot. And just because I am now in the blind spot, I am helpless, but not to be able to deliver at all. And that leads to a negative impact on the team because somebody dependent on my work may not be able to complete their work because I was left in a blind spot by another team member. So it's a very important aspect for doing successful DevOps. Then, of course, you have, let's say, this is kind of a sad, what you can say, trivia. So 1 in 6 of IT decision makers are still unfamiliar with the term DevOps. So again, there is very limited adoption of the term as well as actually doing it in your organization. So do as much as possible of DevOps as possible at your company, because if you don't do it, it's you who is affected. Even though you are a developer or an engineer or a CIO or somebody like that, you may not be able to see the impact for not doing it, because your job was just to write code. But because you don't see the impact, it does not mean that the company is not affected, or it does not mean that your team is not affected. Maybe all of us have been kind of blind. We simply avoid or ignore those facts that maybe we can do something better. So yes, get started today and like help yourself to achieve better success at the end of the day. Also, this is something which is relevant to all of us, which affects all of us. So a bug caught in production ends up costing 100% or 100 times more than if the same bug was found earlier in the development cycle. So that holds true, right? Because you don't want to release a product or release a website which has potential problems. Of course, nobody wants to have what you can say faulty websites or faulty web apps or things like that. So yes, this is basically some trivia around like why should you do it and like how it impacts you and so on. Um, so I'll just move on to the next part. So you can see, or this now talks about the benefits. So if you can look at or read the 4 main points, so it says strong IT performance is a competitive advantage. So of course, it gives you more benefits, because if you're able to ship more effectively, if your customers are more happy, that converts into a satisfied customer company relationship. Even your teams are happy and satisfied because they are now more than confident to do things right. They are more than happy than before. You can deploy code up to 30 times faster, which is really great. And obviously, everybody wants to actually achieve that. You can have up to 60% or 60 times fewer failures. And naturally, DevOps practices will improve your IT performance, because you will be able to precisely anticipate that what kind of environment you will require and when, and you can act on it immediately, in certain cases automatically as well. For example, let me put up a scenario. Let's say you are a popular e-commerce website, and now since Diwali is coming across, you already know the dates that, okay, these are the dates of Diwali, or these are the dates of a certain popular day. So maybe what I want to do is that during those days, I want to scale up my infrastructure. I want to increase the number of servers, or whatever basically whatever the setup is, in short. So you want to act on it automatically. So there are tools and technologies which will allow you to anticipate this kind of workloads requirements in advance, and you can improve naturally. Because of your improved infrastructure performance, you will be able to handle more workload during those popular days or during those festival days, and hence you'll be able to achieve better success. You'll be able to convert those customers visiting your website into actually paying customers and buying products from your website successfully. So in return, you'll be obviously having better business during those days, and that indirectly converts into a better revenue for your company. So you can imagine, if you actually do this correctly and cautiously, like in a given format, then of course you can achieve better success through this. Now, this is something how you should actually get started with DevOps. This is one of my favorite slides ever. So because this gives you this generalization that how you as an individual, or how anybody, for example, as an individual should get started. So if you may notice or focus yourself on the left-hand side diagram, or that kind of a rectangle. So it says 100 levels. So you just get started. So 100, 200, and 300 are like, so beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Consider it that way. So 100 level is more about participation. So you can see people, process, business value, etc. So all of you come together, you follow a certain process, you do things in a certain format or a certain way, and you try to basically participate more than before. Then once you are more than confident with all that thing, you can then consider moving on to a strategy where how you can automate things for yourself. So that brings in infrastructure as code. Means you want to automate that when you push your changes to your branch, the branch should automatically run a build. If the build is successful, of course, the build should also run some tests along with it. That's the minimum you should do. If the test and everything else is successful in the build, it should also automatically trigger a release, and it should automatically deploy to your desired environment. It might be running in Azure, it might be running on your proprietary on-premise data center, and things like that. And then to achieve those advanced benefits, you can consider using on, if you may notice on the diagram on the right hand side, actually in the level 300, you can actually take advantage from tools and products available to you. So you may be using GitHub, you may be using Jenkins to run your build, you may be using Chef to automate your virtual machine configuration and things like that. Some of you might be using this in your daily job. Some of you might be new to this completely. And some of you may not be doing it at all just because of your job role, because you may not have come across any kind of requirement like this. Maybe there's some another team member who is doing this for you. But the reality is, like, everyone, irrespective of your grade, irrespective of your level, you should focus on what you are going to do. You should know every, what you can say, methodology to achieve a proper DevOps process. So number one, or the very initial thing, is to focus on participation. Talking to each other is the best way to get started, you know. So these are some common list of DevOps practices. I would recommend you to grab a screenshot or something like that so that you can refer to it later. I'll be sharing the slides with you after the webinar, so you may not do it at all. That's okay. So list of DevOps practices includes infrastructure as code. That's mainly focusing around automation of your infrastructure, as you can imagine. Continuous integration, or as we call it as CI. So CI is whenever you update your code, it automatically triggers a build, it runs some tests. If the test fails, it does not do a merge, and so on and so on. We'll be doing the workshop right now. In a moment, I'll demonstrate you the tools around it, so that will help you understand more. Automated testing, continuous deployment is automated release, nothing more than that. Release management, you want to release a certain version only, and in case that version is not as expected, you can roll back easily, and so on. So these are some terms. I'll just move on to the next slide. So that brings us to tools and products available for us. This slide is mainly focusing on something called Microsoft Azure. Of course, most of you have heard about it, and already we had done some webinars, so you must be familiar with the term Azure. Now, in this case, what we are talking about is, like, there are some companies or there are some industries or businesses who have compliance that their data centers should be in that particular geographic region only. For example, if you talk about European customers, they have the strict compliance that all the companies should host their data centers in European region itself for all their European customers, and so on and so on. But in that case, if you still want to take advantage of Azure, you can consider looking up at Azure Stack. So Azure Stack is a separate service which is available to you. You can configure the software. Basically, Azure Stack is nothing but a piece of software that runs on your hosted environment, depending upon what workload you want to run. But that's just a kind of what you can say, thought process that you can do some hybrid integration together. But let's move on to the next thing. So as you can see, like everything is compatible, everything is available. You can see for yourself that Microsoft is no more just a closed ecosystem. It's more open than ever. Most of its technologies and tools are actually open source and available on GitHub if you're more than interested to explore how they work. You can also see, like, we are more than compatible with a lot of open source frameworks and tools. As you can see on purpose, everything which you see in the diagram here on the right is related to OSS, or open source software, basically. So yes, everything is compatible out of the box, but of course, depending upon your workloads and environment, you will be responsible to configure your connection strings, for example, and username and password, and of course, things like that. So there will be some person who will be doing it for you, and nothing is automated. So that brings us to a tool called, or an ALM tool called Azure DevOps. So some of you must be aware of a term called VSTS or TFS. VSTS stands for Visual Studio Team Services, and TFS stands for Team Foundation Server. So TFS is an on-premise version. That means that if you want to achieve benefits of this ALM, work management, build and automation and things like that, as a company, you can install something called TFS on your own server. Maybe it might be a laptop or an actual server, but you can install it on your own at your own home or at your office. You can run it, configure it, and so on. And every person actually checks in and checks out code from that particular machine running on your local network and things like that. But then the challenge is that sometimes you'll have to actually have a small team who will manage those servers for you, because having on-premise server, on-premise in the sense, having servers at your home is a costly affair, because you need to take care of electricity, you need to take care of network, you need to take care of many other aspects other than just the software running something on the server. So in that case, you may consider using something called VSTS. But as you can see in the diagram on the slide, we are now talking about something called Azure DevOps, because VSTS is now officially renamed to a service called Azure DevOps. So as somebody asked me a question earlier, Azure DevOps is name of a tool, and only DevOps as a word is the name of a philosophy. It's just a philosophy, means as a team, how we should work to achieve better success. That's the term DevOps. But in this case, Azure DevOps is name of a tool. Okay. So it enables automation and agile and DevOps practices. You can read some quick artifacts about it. Open and extensible means we support out of the box any technology, any platform. Even if you're a Mac user, you might have already understood I'm using a MacBook. I'm not using a Windows environment at all. So it still works for me. Even if you're using Ubuntu at your company or as a hobby project, still it will work for you. It supports your tools and your technologies. It's flexible with on-premises or cloud service, so you can install at your home. At your home, for example, let's say if you're a company working into banking sector or something like that, they may have a strong compliance that your data, your source code should not go out of, let's say, India or out of your office. In that case, if you still want to take advantage of the same concept which we are going to walk through right now, you can use something called Azure DevOps Server. It's like a on-premise installation. You can also see the link here at the bottom. So the link basically will point you to the actual service. We'll be visiting the page in a moment. So you can now plan smarter, collaborate better, shift faster with a set of modern developer services. So these are the services respectively. Azure Boards. Azure Boards basically gives you the capability to plan your work. It gives you work planning basically. Azure Pipelines is a separate service which is responsible or allows you to do build, test, and release automatically. Not automatically actually, because there'll be some person who will configure it at least once, and thereafter it will do the job for you automatically, of course. Then you have Azure Repo, wherein you can host your code or your source code. Some of you must be familiar with the term Git. So we do support Git out of the box, and we also support TFVC. So if some of you who are used to check in, check out, or things like that, we still support that as well. Then we have something called Azure Test Plan, wherein you can configure your test cases and things like that so that your team members can effectively look into what tests to run, and they can appropriately run those tests and submit those feedback back. So basically, that also covers up something called Azure Artifact. So let's say if you are somebody who does a lot of packaging, let's say NuGet packages and things like that, custom extensions or custom artifacts for Visual Studio Marketplace. This is only for those who are doing Visual Studio Marketplace as of today. So you can also now manage your packages more than effectively than before, because earlier that capability was not available at all. And then you have something called extensions marketplace, wherein you can add more than 1,000 of different extensions. Means if you are using Slack for your team communication, you can configure Slack. So say, for example, in your Slack channel, you will automatically receive build updates or status of a build. So whether it is successful, whether it was canceled, who updated it, etc., etc., etc. So it's really brilliant. You need not drop an extra email asking me that, hey, Hardik, what did you do today? You can already see that as my work in your Slack channel itself. That's brilliant. So these are some quick slides that I have, but I'll just jump across so that I can actually jump into the actual demonstration. So I'll just jump through the slides. These are nothing but giving you some artifacts and some screenshots related to that. So I'll just jump through them. And yes, that also brings us to something called we have a lot of partners. So there are companies who have official extensions and some available for Azure DevOps. So you can configure those extensions and you can use those third-party tools as well. So if you're using Trello or Jenkins, we still support that out of the box so that you people can work and focus on working rather than managing it, right? But then yes, there will be somebody who will be managing it for you. So let me switch quickly to my demo. So if you may notice, I'm now back in a browser and I'm logged into something called dev.azure.com. And just to help you understand that how you can do it, I'll just use a incognito browser window. And I'll basically go to, let's say I'll just search for Azure DevOps. Okay, I'm just using a term called Azure DevOps. You'll come across different terms and different search results. So I'll be going to Azure DevOps Services. Of course, using this service requires you to have a Microsoft account. And even if you don't have a Microsoft account, that's okay. You can still use your existing account and use it as an alias. So you may notice like I am on the homepage of Azure DevOps and I can start for free. I can sign in if I already have an account, which I'm already signed in. And if I scroll, or even if you go to this website right now, you can scroll for yourself and view some of those artifacts which I was showing in the presentation earlier right now. So what I'll be doing is, and yes, obviously you must be having a million questions around how much will it cost and what's the thought around it, like how is the pricing for this particular service. So the good news is if you're an open source developer, it is free forever, no questions asked. So if I'm scrolling on the page, I'm on the same web page, I'm scrolling at almost at the bottom of the website or the web page, I'll click about this button which says learn about pricing. So as you can see, I'm not giving you different pricing. It is the same thing which is there on the official website. So say if you're somebody who wants only to run pipelines, that is nothing but you want to simply do CI, CD. You just want to do continuous build and continuous deployment. If you're somebody like that, for open source projects, it's free for like there are 10 free pipelines available. If you're hosting it on Microsoft hosted CI/CD, that is nothing but Azure DevOps. You get one free with parallel job up to 1,800 free build minutes per month. Those who have used VSTS and those who have used the build service of VSTS for free account, you might remember that this limit used to be just 240 minutes per month. They have increased the free build minutes as well. So even if you're on an existing VSTS environment, you are still in a good company. And if you are hosting it on your own on-premise GitHub server or something like that, you can still take one free and you can pay extra per job. So depending upon how you want to use it and how much you want to use it, you can start. But essentially speaking, you can always start for free and you can pay thereafter depending upon how much you are using. So just to show you the main difference here. So if you're an open source project, it's free for unlimited users and build time. So the pipelines are limited to 10 build pipelines. I'll be walking through what pipeline is actually so that even if you have confusion, I'll clarify that. And if not, you can post your questions on Twitter. You get Azure boards so that you can do work item tracking and management. You can do Azure repository so that you can host your Git repos unlimited times, means there is no limit how many repositories you can create, something similar to what you get on GitHub as well. But yes, GitHub does not include pipelines. So yeah, this is an important change. For small teams, if you're a people or a small startup with less than 5 users, you can get it for free as well. No questions asked, no credit cards required as well. So you are in a good company. You get all these services. In short, you can go to this page, basically look up this pricing page and you can search for yourself. Even though it's showing in dollars, I can scroll on the website at the bottom and I can actually change it to, let's say, Indian rupee. And once I do that, let me scroll up again. Just hang on. Okay. So effectively, this is the price per month if you are a team of any size. And this includes 10 users. So you can toggle the amount of users that your company has. Let's say if you're a large company, let's say with 50 users who will be using this, you can actually estimate the pricing right now per month. So this is how the pricing works, and you can explore more on the pricing page, and you can get started today. You can also consider using on-premise, which is nothing but a standalone TFS server or Azure DevOps server. So you can install a TFS server or your own custom server at your own home or your own office, and you can take benefit of the same practices. So I'll just close this for now. So in this case, I'm already signed in. You can see that my organization name is my ID, that is Mistry Hardik 05. This is a fictional public repository for demos and related workloads. So that's my company name, that's Appmatic. So when you also create a new organization or a new project, you get something similar to this, that is Azure DevOps. So once you are there, once you sign up, you're actually directly shown something like this. And if you may notice, when I hover my cursor, I see some services highlighted here with those icons. So let me click on Appmatic. That's my project name, by the way. A project name can be any logical name, so there is no real thoughts around like what this project name should be. This can be a piece of technology your company is working on, a customer's name. Let's say if you're working for BMW, this might say BMW India project or something like that. Some logical name which the team or the company can understand that what this project will actually have. You can have some README. You can see like I have added some README. You can see some statistics that 75% of my build have succeeded. You can see that how many works are created, how many of work is completed, and so on. You can invite new team members. By the way, those who are using VSTS, you might remember that every repository or everything you create was private only. The good thing is now we support public. So for example, if I copy this URL right now, and if I share it with you in the chat window, go ahead and click that link so that what will happen is, what will happen is that when you click the link, you'll actually see the same web page or the same website as I'm seeing right now. That will not require you to create any account or log into account or anything like that. To prove you my point, I'll copy this link. I'll go to an incognito browser, paste the link as it is, and let's see what happens. Does it allow me to see my artifacts? Because I have currently set it as public, anybody on the internet with the access to the link can view the artifact details and stuff like that. Of course, they cannot edit or do anything else, but they can still get an understanding that what Hardik's company is trying to do, how many work items are completed, how many team members are there, and so on. So I hope you might be able to open the link, but you can try it later. You may just focus on the webinar right now. So yes, as I was trying to help you understand that what Azure DevOps is. So Azure DevOps, as you can see, is name of a tool. Now, you may want to set up a project. So in this case, I've already done the meaningful needed. So what I've done is I have already set up some basic artifacts. So let me walk you through. So keep your eyes on the left. So left is the navigation. On the top center, you have, or kind of in the center area, you have this breadcrumb. So depending upon where you are, you can actually see like which position you are in the website. So I can go to dashboards. So I've clicked on dashboards in the left of the screen. And that will get me some artifacts regarding my work. Now, depending upon the internet connection, this may take a moment. So yes, you can now see that there was a build that I ran earlier today in the morning, an hour ago, precisely at 9 o'clock, just to test my changes. I can see that there are some work items, some fictional work items. There is an epic, there is a user story, there is a feature, there is a task, and so on. On the left, if I click wiki, some of you who are familiar with GitHub, you can relate this as well, because on GitHub also we get wiki section by default. It's a different story that nobody regularly creates it. So consider this as your documentation site or something. So for example, this supports Markdown out of the box. So if you are actually on the website, you can also go to the wiki on the same website. You can see these artifacts. You can click this URL. That will actually open up the YouTube channel where, so let me mute that, where it will actually take you to the official announcement and some introduction around Azure DevOps. So I strongly recommend you to go to YouTube, not right now, after the webinar, and look up these videos. It will give you more clarity, of course. So coming back to my own website or this project in Azure DevOps. So this is my wiki page where I have created nothing but some basic links pointing to those YouTube URLs. That's it. Then on the left, if I click board, board actually contains your work items. So you can notice that what these work items are and things like that. So for example, if I open up a user story, so the user story generally is a high level work requirement. So I may say like Azure DevOps API integration, that's assigned to me. It's currently active. I have some description. So I say that configure API to consume connected Azure DevOps API via PAT, personal access token. And the acceptance criteria says connection over a Azure DevOps PAT. Basically some dummy information altogether. Now, of course, walking you through all of these will take a separate webinar altogether. So as of now, I'll just quickly move on to the next few things. Then, as I was talking earlier in the presentation, you can actually visualize all of your work in boards. So you can see like who is doing what, so what is new. So of course, there are no new things, so it's kind of blank if you may focus on the column in the new section. Then you have active column where it says that, okay, there is one work which is active and who is doing it, how many hours of effort is there, and so on and so on. If is there anything which is resolved, means is there anything which is completed? No, means nothing is pending to be done. And closed indicates that, okay, the work or relevant work was considered as complete and it's closed or marked as closed now. So I can see some artifacts regarding my work. I can manage my work. I can understand which team member is doing what, and that gives me better understanding and clarity around it. Then I can click on backlogs. That gives me my sprint planning. This is something called sprint planning. So I can actually look up my backlogs. So the current iteration is 1, and there are 2 of them. So basically, if I click on iteration 1 that is in the sprint, I can see that what is it that I'm supposed to do. So one of the work is to do Azure DevOps API integration, and another work is to create a welcome Azure DevOps web app. So I've already done the web app, so it's already marked as done. So let me close this right now. So if you may notice, now you can see some more details in the column. Because of the resolution on my laptop, the entire page is not very clearly visible, but that's okay. You can scroll through horizontally. So you can notice like which work item is in which state, which is the iteration path, how many story points, and so on. I can actually run custom queries if I wish to, but that's not what I'll be doing right now. So I'll be jumping to something called repos. Repos is nothing but you can have your repositories. Those who are using GitHub or at least use GitHub at least once, you can completely understand what I'm showing right now. So this is very much similar or identical to what you have been doing on GitHub as well. You can notice that I have a branch called staging as well as master. So staging branch is what we are in right now. It has a dummy folder which was updated 9 hours ago, precisely yesterday. So yesterday I went ahead and created a dummy web app, which is a ASP.NET Core MVC application, which does nothing but a very simple thing. It simply returns a greeting message. So I have a repository, or you can also call data access layer or business access layer, depends how you want to name it. I call it repository, which does my business for me. So the repository returns me or gets me a method which says get greeting message. So depending upon the current system date and time, basically the current hour of the day, it will return me good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and so on. And that's the only change I have edited in the scaffolded template. Otherwise, everything is default. There is no special programming that I've done. It's just for the demo, so that does the job for me. If you see my logic of how to read those greeting messages, the greeting message is very straightforward. Of course, there is a better way or maybe some other way to do this, but this is the easiest or the most simple I found, so I just have it this way. So depending upon the hour of the day, so if it's less than 12, I say good morning. If it's less than 16, that is 4, means anything before 4 o'clock is good afternoon, and anything after 4 o'clock for me is good evening. That's how my logic is right now. And then I'm also having a fictional unit test. What it does is it runs a unit test across my repository for a given scenario. So depending upon the time that I'm passing, so if I'm passing 9:30, obviously I'm expecting it should return good morning. If I pass something called, let's say 2:30, it should say good afternoon. And if I pass in anything after 4 o'clock, in this case 6:30, it should say good evening, and so on and so on. So very traditional project structure. No special programming skills required except C Sharp. Otherwise, no special .NET framework oriented features or anything like that. A very simple app. And then what I've done is, just to help you understand, I have actually built it using my MacBook itself. So I'm using a tool called Visual Studio for Mac. Some of you must be using it. So if you come here in my actual source code, this is my actual editor. I'm actually in my source. So you can see that I'm just setting a viewback.greeting variable value to the greeting that is coming back from the response. And in my view, in my index.cs HTML, some of you who are doing MVC might be familiar with this. Nothing's fancy, some straightforward job here, some basic bootstrap from the default template. You can see that I'm simply printing that message from Azure DevOps. That's the only message. So let me run this for you right now. So this is running locally for us. It should not take much time because it's a very simple project. So it will be kind of quick enough, but if at all you are doing something advanced, it may take maybe a minute or more. Okay. So you may notice this is just a dummy template, nothing fancy here. A simple good morning from Azure DevOps. It says good morning because of the logic that we are having. Obviously, you people can understand what I'm trying to show. So let me close that. Okay. Let me go to my, what you can say, Visual Studio. So I'll just stop running the web app. And that's pretty much it. That's a basic, simple HTML oriented website that we are having. Nothing fancy. We have some code logic here. We have an interface, some good practices here, having an interface and then an implementation, and then actually consuming it accordingly, and so on and so on. So we have a website. Everything is in place. But then our customer or the person, or let's say we ourselves, realize that, hey, maybe what I want to do is when I run the website, it looks old school. Maybe I want to change some color. Maybe I want to update some cosmetic properties of it. I'm updating something simple so that we can finish the demo quickly. Otherwise, of course, there are some more advanced changes that we can do, programming and other things. But right now, imagine this is the current output of the website, okay? And what I want to do is, or what I wish to do is, I want to basically, let's say, update this blue button to something else, means in short, some change in reality. So let me do that. So let me come back here in my Visual Studio. I'll do some silly change, BTN primary, large. So let me go and look up my bootstrap button. Apologies, I'm not a seasoned web developer, so I don't really remember commonly used styles and properties. Yeah, there we go. We have some built-in stuff. So let's say I want to show this green color, and that's success. Yeah, I know you must be laughing at me for my web skills, but it's okay. I can live with that. So I'll just replace that, a very silly change. I'll just run this and let's see, the button should see or show that green color instead of that traditional blue. And let's run this, and it's almost there. Yeah, there we go. A very simple change, nothing fancy, but it's just a change basically, okay? But then what I want to do is, instead of changing and working directly, that's generally what people do. Like, they make this mistake. They simply focus on fixing it or finishing your work, but rather than updating the relevant items here. So before I actually change this, or before I should have done this, what I would like to do is I will go to my board, I'll go to my backlog, I'll go to my iteration one. So I have a welcome Azure DevOps web page user story. I'll go there, click this ellipsis. That will show me a bunch of options. I go to add link, I'll go to new item. and I should see something. Yep. So I want to create a new item as a child. I want to add a task. I want to say update button. Well, it's a hypothetical example. You people can understand. Like it can be something more advanced than this, but this is what will do the job for us today. So I just click OK. COLO, you are sad. My English is also not so good, but anyways. So yeah, that's it. Update the button to have green color or something like this. Priority is 1, which is very important. Activity is design development. It's development because I want to implement those changes. Original estimate 1 hour, remaining 1 hour, completed 0 hours, and so on. I'll just click on save and close. So basically I have some update. So if I refresh my page, so if you can imagine, the real benefit to really do this before you start working is helping your team members understand that what you are actually doing. So you want to update a button color. Now I know this. So now I know, or somebody will know when they update this page or come to this page that, okay, Hardik is updating the button color already. So somebody's already behind that work. So sometimes you can also avoid repeated work because sometimes because you don't communicate effectively, maybe chances are that both of you as colleagues are working on the same feature and then somebody realizes that it was a waste of time. So yes, updating your work items is a good idea, and you should really do that so that your team members are also up to date. So you have your task. So it says update button color. So I have something for me. And then what I'll do is I'll go to that particular task. Let me go there. I'll create a new branch. Okay, so I'll say refactor -7. Now, if you may notice here in the left somewhere, 7 is my ID of my task, of my work item. So I'm saying refactor 7. On Appmatic, that's the name of the repository. I want to create it on basis of staging, and this is the link work item so that when I update my code and when you go back, let's say after 6 months, if somebody sees that, okay, on 16 September, what are the changes made, by whom and where, so they can actually understand that, okay, this was the change called refactor 7, that's the branch name. This is the work item which was affected and who did the change, basically. So everything is trackable. So I click on create branch. Okay, I'll just wait for the page to refresh. You may notice that I'm in refactor 7 branch. I'm using a tool called source tree. It's of course from Eltashian. It's a separate company. Basically, I can obviously do some command line, but for sake of simplicity, I prefer to use the tool called source tree, which is free, no cost involved. It's freely available, no questions asked. So I'll make a pull. I'll pull on my staging. I'll wait for the service to get us the update. Now, what I want to do is I want to actually do some changes. So for example, under file status, you can see that on index.cshtml, that is only one file that we have changed. Instead of this primary, we have updated the class to btn-success. So what I'll be doing now is I'll be basically saying hash refactor 7. That's a markdown syntax that I'm having. Then what I'll do is I'll simply say update it. Basically, I'll describe what the change involves. So in this case, the only change that involves is the color of the button. So I'll say updated the color of the button to green. Okay. So I'll just update that text. Basically, I'll select the file which I want to commit. It's only one file. If you may notice closely, it's nothing but the tree structure. So don't confuse yourselves. Okay. I'm updating actually only one file. So now I'll click on commit. And then I'll click on push, but I will not push to staging directly. I'll be cautious to update my refactor 7 branch, which we just created right now from the portal. I'll click OK and wait for the service to accept our changes. If it was failing, it would show us an error. If you may notice, the only sad part of the tool is that it does not show you if it's successful. It shows you an error or something only if it is failing. So that's it. I mean, so our job is complete. So I'll come back here. I'll go to pull request. So you may notice there is something called pull request. And then it says that you updated a particular branch just now, create a pull request. So it's smart enough. I actually want to do that. So I'll click that. Let me close this websites. Okay, I want it to be into staging. So I want to merge my development branch. This is my development branch. I'm merging into my staging branch. Okay, so I'll just change something. You may notice that this hash reflects as the header, and this hyphen actually yields it as a bulleted list item. I can add some reviewers in my team if I want to, so that they can do code review as well, but it's just me, so I'm fine with it. And I can also see that what this change involves. If I continue scrolling, I can also see n number of files which are affected with this change. It's only one file right now, so that's the only change we are seeing in the difference view. So out of the box, you can compare like if actually you updated the correct files or not. So I'll click create. I will wait for that. And you can see that I can add reviewers later on as well. But then I just want to simply say approve, and then I'll say complete. When I'm completing this, I also want, it's a general practice if you're using Git as a source code repository type, where you want to delete your development branch because that work is no more there. So you are no more going to change the color anymore. So that it's a good idea to delete the branch. But sometimes you still might want to keep it. So you might want to remember to not to delete. But in my case, I will let it be deleted. So that's okay. I want to mark my related work items as completed. So basically my task, which is currently in new state, will automatically get updated to complete or done state. So I'll click on complete merge. Now, depending upon how much change or how complicated the change is, the changes may update immediately. As it's a very simple change, it is updated immediately. It says completed. I can go to my branches, which is available on the left, just to remind you. You can now see that we did create something called refactor 7 as a branch, but it's no more there because it is deleted. But I can go to my staging branch. I can go to my source code. I can go to the project. Under views, I can actually go and look up my index.chhtml. And you may notice instead of BTN primary, my staging branch is updated with the new change where the button will show me the green color. Okay, so these are the simple or silly changes. That's it. So my change is reflected, my work is done. But before I continue, I do need to remember to pull back on staging. Means I need to update my copy always before I continue working. So you can notice there are no pending changes, and you can see in the history, this is the great part of this tool. You can actually visualize who is the author. So let me shrink it here. So you can visualize the graph so you understand which point is going where. You can reflect the changes. You can see some details here in the bottom, and so on, some history and so on. You can click on one of those artifacts. You can obtain what this change involves. So you can, the tool gives you a clear visualization. And it's not just you as a developer. Let's say if you have, let's say 10 other team members, and if they are also using it, when you pull those changes, you can see those history details of those developers as well. So that's interesting. That way, you know which developer is up to what and what was the last change the developer has made. So before you start coding, you can actually see that if there was a method which has changed, and in that case, if you see such change, you can actually highlight in the team communication, or you can query with your developer directly via email that, hey, I noticed this change has happened. Can you please explain? So it avoids unnecessary drama and unnecessary chaos. So I hope you understand the importance of participation. So yes, so we have completed some change, and then what I can now do is, so imagine my work is done, everything is set. So that's your Git repo, so Azure DevOps repository. However, some of you are still using old school TFVC, Team Foundation Version Control, check in, check out basically. So not to worry, you can click here where it says, let's say the name of your project. So for my name, it says Appmatic. In your case, it says something else. I can click on new repository. When I click new repository, I do have a choice to create another repository of type Git. But if I click the drop down, I still have the choice to create a repository of type TFVC, which is nothing but check in and check out, which commonly you people are doing. but I would recommend, that's my personal opinion rather, not recommended by a particular company or anyone. It's just my personal opinion. Consider using Git for your better capabilities, basically. Okay. So I'll not do anything right now. I already have some basic project structure ready. So that leads us to a scenario where I now want to automatically deploy or automatically configure my environment. Okay. So that brings us to something called Azure pipelines or Azure DevOps pipelines. So you may notice that you have something called build. So under builds, you can actually create a new build pipeline. You may notice I already have one. I'll click edit. Let it load. It will take some time. Okay, so you can probably notice that I'm on the edited section of my build, and this is how it looks like. Because it's a .NET Core application, so these are the steps of running that build. So what it does, it restores, it updates NuGet packages or any third-party libraries to be restored. It performs the actual build on the actual project. It runs the test if at all there is any test project available in the solution. Then it also does something called publishing. So it actually creates a zip file for us, and it actually puts that zip file created into a folder called drop automatically. So these are some basic steps which it does for us. If you are somebody from, let's say, other than .NET, it still supports a different variety of stuff. So let me quickly show you that. So if I go to builds, I'm back to my builds. I can click on new. I can click new build pipeline. That will offer me some basic stuff. So it will prompt me that you want to connect your GitHub right now. You can connect your GitHub by default if you wish to. But of course, that requires you to have a GitHub account and the appropriate permission. There are some developers who are part of an organization, but they may not have required permission. So maybe you want to look up your permissions before you do this. Or else you can create Azure repos. So Azure repos is nothing but the code which is running in Azure DevOps. So the term Azure should not confuse you with Microsoft Azure as a service. Okay, so don't confuse yourself. They are not really related. It's just the terminology that is what they are looking at. So I select Azure repos. I select my repository. You may notice that they are recommending me a certain template. But if I scroll, I can use it for Android build. I can use Ant. I can use C++. I can use it for Docker. I can use it for Go. I can use it for Gradle. I can use it for HTML. I can use it for Jekyll. I can use it for Maven. I can use it for Node.js, and so and so and so. PHP, my God, Ruby, Xamarin. You can even use it for building your Mac applications. How brilliant is that? So it's very interesting. I strongly recommend you to explore once we are done with the webinar. And of course, it's all free. So please go ahead and use it later. So yes, I can pick a template and continue. So instead of continuing right now, what I'll do is I'll again click and go to editing of my existing build pipeline. So that is how I created the build pipeline. And this is what it looks like. So let it load. Sometimes it takes a bit time. So yes, this is how my pipeline looks like. One important thing I want you to focus on is, if you may notice, I have built a ASP.NET MVC, ASP.NET Core MVC application. I'm running the build not on a Windows machine. I'm running a build on a Linux environment. How brilliant is that? I can click the drop down and I can choose another environment of my choice as well. I can also run my Mac builds or anything for iPhone or iPad development directly from here itself. So it's a true cross-platform build environment. So no matter what technology you're working on, no matter what ecosystem you're working for, the Azure pipeline is a good choice for you. So yes, I'm using Linux preview. I can also use Ubuntu and so on, but I'll leave it to the one that I'm currently having. Okay. I purposefully set it to Linux so that I can give you confidence that even though this guy is developing a .NET website using .NET Core, he can still run the build on a Linux environment. By the way, if you may notice, these hosted environments, they are managed by Microsoft. So you need not configure, you need not do anything extra. But you can actually create a private build agent. A build agent is something where you can use your laptop, or you can have a separate server in your company, which is configured with those tools and specific software, so that when the build request comes, Azure DevOps will redirect that build request to that environment. Of course, that implies that that machine or that laptop is available publicly on the internet. In case there is no internet access, the build will not run, and unnecessarily it will give you errors. Okay. So more on that in a different webinar, but yes, you can still take advantage of the built-in hosted environment. So I'm using hosted Linux preview. Okay. I'll come here into triggers tab, and I'll enable something called continuous integration. So I'll enable that. I will batch my changes when the build is in progress. Sometimes it happens that there are more than one developer working on the same branch, and chances are that when I updated something, within few seconds, you also updated something as a developer, and that may lead to some confusion. So the build may go mad about it, like which build to run. So batching the changes is a good idea. So it's mainly queuing your changes. So as of now, this is what my setup looks like, a very simple one. I can even schedule it at a particular date and time, but that's not what we want. I can click here and click on save. I don't want to queue it right now. So I've just saved the changes. So CI is enabled. So whenever now onwards, whenever there is an update in staging branch, it will trigger this build. It will automatically run this build every time I update a source into my staging. So that's the minimum I want. But then that is only the build part of it. Build in the sense it will simply run some build, run some test, and simply create an output folder, or basically a .zip file for me, which I can use for my deployment. What I can also do is I can go to release, which is available from the left, and I can configure one of my favorite environments available. So I want to, let's say, create a Azure web app. So I can go to my Azure account, which is again on the same account, so I can use it directly in the new tab. You can, without any concerns, use your AWS or your own IaaS infrastructure or your own PHP machine infrastructure, and so on and so on. The only thing is you'll have to manually connect to your infrastructure. Manually in the sense you'll have to configure or find ways to configure your PHP machine or something like that to be able to do it. I'm using Azure because it gives me the convenience out of the box. So let it load. I'm just waiting for the dashboard to come up. Let me switch my directories. So I'll just switch my directory. That's a different directory in which I was logged in. So I'll log into my account and I'll just wait for it to complete. We are almost done with the webinar, so just hold on a bit more. Okay, so I'll create a web app service for myself. So it's in Azure, but as I said, you can do the same for AWS and other environments as well. So I'll go to and create a simple web app, nothing fancy. I'll just jump across those artifacts. So I'll say app name. So I need to say, let's say, Dear Azure DevOps. Okay, some silly website which you can access. Once I'll share it in the chat window, you can access it and you can verify how it looks. So I'll just go with the default environment. You can notice that it's running Linux. I'm not using Windows, so that's totally cool. And let me change the pricing plan to free so that I don't get charged, of course. Oops, I did something wrong. Create new. So I can have it in, let's say, Southeast India or something like that. But let's leave it to the US. It's okay. No premium pricing, please. Give me the most basic one. So yes. So I'm using, oops. Okay, for Linux, because it's a managed instance, for first 30 days, it's free. And then it is estimated at almost $35. In short, you can pick your environment. That's okay. And you can have a runtime stack. which you can configure. So you can see that I can choose from Node.js to Java, Tomcat, and anything else before I get started, Python, Ruby. Now, because I'm using .NET Core 2.1, I'm cautious to select my runtime stack to 2.1. I don't want to enable the application insights. I'll click create. I'll just wait for the service to get created. So I'll just wait for the deployment. It will take maybe less than a minute, but let's wait. The status is still here. It's showing deployment in progress. While that's happening, let me come back to my tab. Okay, because of the resolution, the button was hiding at the bottom, so I had to zoom out. So I click the new pipeline because there is nothing right now, as you can notice. I'm doing it from scratch for you people. So I'll just wait for the service to populate. Okay, so you may notice it is giving me some interesting graphification of my configuration. So I can choose one of these environments available here, where what we can do is we can select the service environment of environment of our choice, where we can say we want to do deployment of Azure App Service deployment. So I click apply. I can name it as my Azure environment. It's just a label. I click on the link, and so you may notice, as I can see here, the deployment is successful in my Azure. So I can click the drop down and choose my Azure subscription. Of course, this implies that you also have an Azure subscription, then only it is possible. So I'll just select the enterprise account. So I'll just authorize. Let me close this. So I'm just verifying my credentials again. I'm just waiting for the authorization to be complete. Okay, so I can now see it's not showing me the web app. So this is the service name it is running. So I may need to refresh my connection. Okay. So I have my setup. I'll just save my changes. I'm just verifying my subscription before I continue. So it's FA0101C3. Yeah, so that's right. So it will pick up the name of the service and it will automatically deploy. So what we want to do is, okay, great. The pipeline is there. And here in the artifact, I want to select a build pipeline. And then I want to enable continuous deployment trigger. So it automatically, so every time there is a new build happening, and if the build is successful, it will automatically deploy the basically the resource or the artifact to your Azure instance. So once it's done, I'll just save those changes as well. And that's it. So now what I'll do is, before we quickly conclude our webinar for today, I'll go here, I'll trigger the build manually. So I'll just queue the build, which you already have. Notice the output was with that green button already happening. So what I want to do now is I'll click on queue. So you may notice that was the last change that we did right now in the webinar, refactor 7. So it is queued successfully. Because it's a simple website without many changes or without any heavy workloads, it should happen in less than a minute. So let's wait for a while. Meanwhile, while that is happening, while the deployment is taken care of, let me switch back to my presentation. I'm left with a few slides, not many more. So you may notice, if you're a company who is interested to understand DevOps and trying to understand like how you are doing DevOps or are you doing it correctly or not, you can go to this website called devopsassessment.azureWebsites.net. You'll have to fill up a form with some contact information. Microsoft will get back to you with basically some Q&A, some question and answer, and they'll try to help you understand like what is it that you can improve and what is it that you need to actually start using to actually take benefits from the DevOps ecosystem. You can also visit this website called aka.ms/our DevOps journey, where you can see some interesting video of the actual developers who will actually talk you through about how Microsoft took care about their practices and how they adopted DevOps and how they are doing it in their own organization. So even if you're not a fanboy of Microsoft, it is still a good thing to do that you can actually understand that how one of the best technology companies in the world is actually taking advantage of DevOps for such a large code base with so many millions of developers actually, and not just customers. These are some resources which you'll be able to get once you receive the slides after our webinar in a moment. So these are some interesting resources. You can actually do some labs yourself. So let's say if I click this link, obviously, like you may not have been able to understand everything we talked today. So if you go to azure-devopslab.com, you can actually learn how to set up your environment. You can actually learn how to set up the code or anything else which I demonstrated right now. You can also understand how to set up Jenkins or your Java application for Tomcat, and so on and so on. In short, one website for your complete DevOps hands-on requirement. And it's official. It's not managed by a third party. It's officially managed and taken care by Microsoft. So the content is precise and clear and concise. So you can go to this website as well. And of course, there are some other interesting resources you can explore once you receive the slides. So yes, happy DevOps. So that is all about breaking the wall of confusion. So you can see for yourself that the wall is broken, everyone is happy, and everything's all in place with effectiveness. And hence you achieve success riding a dinosaur. So that's interesting, right? I mean, you're not the cat, but assume you are that person, basically. So yes, I hope you understood some important facts and figures about what DevOps should be and how you should do DevOps. Of course, with a very short time on hand, like it took some extra time for you. So what we can do now is we can quickly look into this just before we conclude this, just one more minute. So the build is successful. You can notice that my build was great. I want to see if the CI is also triggered. So you may notice that it automatically triggered a new environment. It is in progress. You can see for yourself. Just a minute more and we are good to roll out. I'll just wait for the page to refresh. So just waiting a while. And yes, I do remember I need to answer your questions, which hopefully you people have asked me or asked us on Twitter. I'll make sure I do that once we wrap up our webinar. So yes, it has downloaded the artifact. It is waiting to deploy to Azure App Service. I'm doing it for the first time, and you can see that it says, okay, it is failing, method not allowed. Okay. Anyways, what I'll do is I'll just update this. So because this is a public repository, I insist you to take a note of this repository actually before I wrap it up. So go to that link. You'll be able to see everything and anything that I'm doing, not just today. I'll be constantly updating this with some new content and new stuff. So you can always come here. The only thing is you will not have the permission to edit anything on this website because that requires permission. But once you come here, you're able to see like how I have configured it and so on. And if you have, if you still need more help, you can tweet me or on Dear Azure. Sorry about some environmental configuration problems and with limited time. Let's wrap it up. So thank you so much for being with us today, and see you in the next one. Okay, so stay tuned, have a good day, and have a good weekend. Bye-bye.